Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining. I am going to give everyone just a couple more minutes, but thank you for being on time and prompt, and we will get into the information session in just a minute or two. Thanks. Can you all write in the chat, or do you not have that function turned on? If not, feel free as we go to ask questions in the Q&A. If you have additional questions that pop up that are not related to what we're talking about, we can try to get to them at the end. So definitely put those into the Q&A as we go through, because I believe we're in webinar format and the chat function is not going to work. But I definitely want to make sure we leave plenty of time for questions at the end of this session. So the way that this works is we're going to run through an overview of the Build Fellowship of CAP-exempt H-1Bs, and then we're going to talk through the program itself and open it up to a Q&A so we can have a discussion at that point. The meeting is being recorded, so just for everyone's reference, if you're bringing up anything personal in the Q&A, this is being recorded. We don't post that portion of this on our YouTube, but just FYI. And yes, I'm really excited. So we will hop in to the presentation. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Danielle Goldman. I'm co-founder and executive director of Open Avenues Foundation, which in the last year has gone through a new transition and expansion into an initiative called the Build Fellowship. So I'm also co-founder and CEO of the Build Fellowship, which is on a mission to expand Open Avenues Foundation's CAP-exempt H-1B initiative that we started 6 years ago. My personal story and why I'm here today is because my father, Jeff Goldman, is an immigration attorney, a wonderful, beautiful human who taught me pretty much everything that I know about the immigration world. And that's because I grew up around stories of his clients, of the individuals that he was meeting who were changing this country for the better. The scientists, the engineers, the doctors that he was helping stay here and build careers here and therefore impact communities and our innovation economy, et cetera. So that's a huge part of my life and my story, and why I decided to work with Jeff to build new solutions in the space. So we at Open Avenues Foundation and now at the Build Fellowship are on a mission to open pathways for individuals to have careers in the United States, no matter where you come from, the equal opportunity to be able to add value to US society and demonstrate that when you stay here, you're actually creating value for Americans as well. All of that is core to the type of programming that we run, the information sessions that we do, and you'll see that come through in the CAP-exempt H-1B opportunity that we have built here. So I probably don't need to tell most of you this, but some of you might not know about our pretty archaic immigration system, and specifically the H-1B lottery, which is the most common work visa pathway in the US, especially for international student graduates, because you need a degree in a field that is related to the work you will be doing at a company in the United States. You don't have to be extraordinary. You just have to have a related to degree, at least a bachelor's degree, to the work that you will be doing. There are, of course, a few other requirements, but that is at the core of this. So if you graduate with a bachelor's or a master's degree from a US school and you have your optional practical training for 1 to 3 years, OPT, A very common next step is this H-1B, but it's on an annual lottery that is capped at 85,000 each fiscal year, which starts on October 1st of every year. So this coming October will be the fiscal year 2025 start. And anyone that just won the lottery, the H-1B lottery in March, will start in the new fiscal year on October 1st, 2025. And so next March of 2025, there will be a lottery for fiscal year 2026, which will start October of next fall, 2025. Really confusing. Why does the government not work on a calendar year? I don't know, but it's certainly important to understand the cycle of H-1Bs. It's part of the reason it's incredibly restrictive, because it's happening only once per year. And if you are shut out, you need to know your options. There's about a 30% selection rate. That has obviously changed year over year. Last year was 15%, but there were duplicate duplicate registrations for individuals put in at a rate that was high enough that the government took action and reduced that ability for multiple registrations this year. The change happened where every individual was correlated to their registration was correlated to your passport number, which meant that each individual had one chance of getting selected. And so that was a big change this year. It resulted in an increase to 30% selection rate. We don't anticipate there being a second lottery this year because of the change that was made up front to ensure that there wasn't duplication in the first selection. So I get the question a lot, well, the lottery happened, but in the past, there's been another lottery about August. Attorneys are not projecting that that's definitely going to happen. Now, maybe it could happen if all 85,000 slots are not taken by those who were selected, then they will have a second lottery, but it won't be the same amount of selection in that second round as it was last year. So I hope that makes sense. The TLDR takeaway here is that we have a restrictive H-1B system, and you need to be thinking of your plan B option if you're not selected. And if you're in STEM OPT right now, you should be entering the lottery every single year that you can, even if you're working at a company, because it doesn't matter that you have 3 years of STEM OPT. Give yourself an optimal amount of selection opportunity, right? Which means year over year, it's better to have 3 chances in the lottery than it is to wait until the end of your OPT. So tell your employer that they can de-risk by entering you each year into the lottery. Don't wait. But if you're not selected, you should definitely go to your employer with other options and know your options, right? And if you're a founder, this is also some of these will be applicable as well. So for folks that want to build up a case for an O1, there are 8 criteria that are listed everywhere online. There are organizations that are helping you achieve those criteria. Some of them are getting published in media, being a judge of others' work. Can you participate in a hackathon and win it as an expert to demonstrate that you actually have won awards, which is another one of those criteria. So those are probably the top 3 easiest to achieve potentially, which is media coverage, winning awards that are recognized nationally or internationally, and the being a judge of others' work in some way. If you can meet 3 of those criteria, amazing, you're qualified for an O1. If you're already at the end of your OPT and you're like, shoot, I didn't spend the time. I was building my business or I was building my career and I didn't spend the time to try to get published, then you might start thinking about that now, but you don't have time potentially, and you need to think of another option. If you're from Canada or Mexico, consider the TN visa. It's not on here, but if you're from Singapore or from Chile, you can consider the H-1B1, which doesn't have a lottery system. And if you're from Australia, there's an E3. So know that there's some country-specific options. An L1 visa is if you are willing to go, if you work for a multinational company, so your company has offices in different countries and you're willing to go work outside the US for 1 year, you document that you've been a manager outside the US for 1 year, and you are able to then, come back on an L1 visa. F1 CPT programs are a common Plan B option for folks who want to go back to school. A lot of law firms don't recommend this because historically there's been a ton of scrutiny on these types of programs. So if you're going to do one, make sure it's reputable. And if you don't want to go back to school, you don't qualify for an O1, you don't want to leave the US on an L1, you're not from any of the countries that are qualified for E3TN or or H1B1, then you might consider a CAP exempt H1B. So I'm really excited to introduce this. A lot of folks haven't heard of a CAP exempt H1B before, so I'm going to jump to the next slide and tell you all about it. One more thing. For anybody here who doesn't understand why I'm like these letters and all of this seems very overwhelming, I want to break down the fact that there are temporary work visas in the US, and then there are green cards, which have immigrant intent, right? So our immigration pathways, long-term immigration solutions that are employment-based, some are family-based. As you wait for these employment-based green cards, which can take 2 years up to, longer than that, you're going to need to think of a temporary work visa solution in the interim, right? You can apply from your OPT to a green card right away, but it will take time to process. And for the majority of you, you will have to build up a case for a green card, or you will need to take time. You will need 2 years to do a perm with your employer. So you will need a stopgap solution, which is why most people go on to one of these temporary work visa options. You can do this with your employer. You can do it for your own company, but the CAP exempt H1B is a path that's worth understanding. And thank you all for being here to listen to more about it. There are 4 organizations in the United States that Congress has deemed are completely exempt from the H1B lottery system. They can sponsor foreign nationals for H1Bs at any time of year. Why? Because Congress said that these 4 types of organization add significant value to US society. Universities hiring professors and hiring teaching assistants. These individuals and universities themselves add value to society. For instance, government research institutions, nonprofit research institutions like nonprofit hospital systems that are doing research, nonprofits affiliated with a university is the last category. So Congress said, if you work for any of these 4 types of organizations, you can be sponsored for a CAP exempt H1B. The reality also is that the law says if you are in an H1B, you can actually have 2 H1Bs. You can have 3 H1Bs, but they have to equal a reasonable amount of work. So these 4 organizations can sponsor you for visas at any time of year. And the reality is you can hold multiple H1Bs. So Jeff Goldman, my father, my co-founder, and one of the most creative immigration minds in this country, said in 2014, well, if you work part-time in CAP exempt H1B status for one of these 4 types of organizations, then any US employer is technically able to sponsor you as well for a concurrent H1B. And if you're already in status at any time of year, then your second H1B can be filed at any time of year. And so the way that this works for us and for the idea of concurrent employment in general in the CAP exempt H1B world is if you work part-time for any CAP exempt H1B organization, then any US employer can file for a full-time cap-exempt H-1B for you. So if you want to go work part-time at a university or part-time at a research hospital, you can. If they will sponsor you for a cap-exempt H-1B, then your own company or your biotech employer or your tech company or your hedge fund can file for a full-time cap-exempt H-1B for you. Okay, so super cool, right? That you can do this. It's a little bit different, it's creative, but Jeff and I recognized that universities don't really want to sponsor you for the minimum 5 hours a week so that you can go work somewhere else. And some of them have even built out programs. Some of you on the call might have heard of the Global Entrepreneur in Residence program, which, by the way, Jeff, my co-founder, started in Massachusetts in 2014 as his first iteration of this program. It works well, but universities don't really want to offer positions for 5 hours a week to all of you here so that you can go work elsewhere, right? They want to keep their talent. And they're not really in the immigration space, they're in the education world. So we built a fellowship program where we hire foreign nationals for 5 hours per week to work with our nonprofits affiliated with universities. And if you work 5 hours in our fellowship program, then you can work for any employer in the United States if they will file a concurrent H-1B. Kshitij, would love to hear your question if you'd like to jump in. Do I need to give you permission is the question. Go ahead, Kshitij.
Yeah, yes. So I just joined this call, right? So obviously, thanks for walking us through with the, the cap exempt path and things like that. Just wanted to know, obviously, I know probably you will cover this as well, like in terms of, you said that you will be seeking out people who can work for 5 hours per week and go with this particular model of, going through the H-1B. Just wanted to know, like, is it completely at random that you might reach out to people, or would it be based on like if I am really interested, would it be that case, or is
Oh,
there
we'll
some
get
other
into that.
criteria?
We'll get right into
Later.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Just putting it out there. Ignore me. That's okay.
All good. We'll get into it. Cool. I will keep going then. I want to make sure that everyone's clear on the model as we go. So if there are questions, throw them in the Q&A and I'll make sure that everything here is clear so you understand what we're talking about as we go. Okay. So let's talk about, well, you know what? Let's go to qualifications first. Okay, so how do you qualify for an H-1B in general? It's pretty much the same for our program. You need a bachelor's degree and or equivalent work experience in a specific field in which you want to work. We look for 2 years of work experience in a related field, and we would love to see experience mentoring or working with peers. You also need a benefactor who's going to nominate you for this program. You yourselves as foreign nationals, if there's any companies on the call, you are nominating an employee, but foreign nationals can never pay for their own H-1B filing fees. The Department of Labor says, no way. This is an employer visa and an employer needs to pay for this. So you can't pay for our fellowship program because it does include a visa as part of this fellowship. So if you have an employer, you can actually have them nominate you for this and pay for the program. Or if you have your own company, they can nominate you and pay for this program. Or if you start an entity like a consulting company, or your family has an entity like a family foundation or a company in general, any LLC, they can pay for this fellowship program, but you cannot pay. So that is how that works with the benefactor. We can get into questions about that later. Our Build Fellowship program is, so I'm going to go here. I'm actually going to share something I think is really cool. We just launched a new hub that shows exactly what our Build Fellowship program is. And our fellowship program, you can see, are foreign nationals who launch projects within their field of expertise for 5 hours per week. You can see here that Kishan is a mechanical engineering fellow because he studied mechanical engineering in college, and he works for a mechanical engineering company. And he needed a CAP exempt H-1B, so he applied for the fellowship. We hired him as a mechanical engineering fellow, and he knows a lot about medical devices. So he launched a project with us that he leads with students completely remotely. He picks the time, and he has these sessions with students each week. And he logs in, and the students log in, and he works with them on this project. Students have an ability to sign up if they're from one of our partner schools, because the reason we're CAP exempt is because we're a nonprofit partnered with universities. So this project is with Open Avenues Foundation. But we have other nonprofits in our network, such as Dream Venture Labs, which is an organization based out of Boston for immigrant entrepreneurs. So we have multiple fellowship programs and are continuing to build out more Build Fellowship programs nationally. Again, the summary there is that there's a lot of opportunity for fellows to come into our program right now. We're expanding. We're going beyond just, STEM and business, which we've historically done. We have lawyers, we have urban planners, we have marketing professionals, we have psychologists that just joined our fellowship. So we're continuing to expand who this is for. So I want to talk about the timeline. If you decide that you want to join the Build Fellowship and you fill out the nomination form on our website, you can start by doing an evaluation with us. We will go through and we will look to see that you've been nominated by either an employer or a benefactor, which is your company or an entity that you have identified that will pay for the fellowship. We will do a candidate screening and an H-1B evaluation. We need to make sure that you're qualified for an H-1B if we're going to have you go through this, and we'll sign a contract. We will then do visa processing, which takes about 6 to 8 weeks. We have a 99% approval rate for the individuals who come into our program. And then employment starts about a week later once we get an approval, not just with our organization, but we will work with your company so that your full-time employer, again, whether it's your own company that you're starting as a founder, or whether it's a larger employer, that they are filing a full-time visa for you on top of ours. And so both visas are going to be filed, and as long as the employer visa is filed for full-time work, you can start working immediately. So we're looking at about 10 to 14 weeks total for you to be working from in the Open Avenues Foundation program or the Dream Venture Labs Build Fellowship program and working for your full-time employer. So this is how it goes. You must remain employed in the fellowship program for as long as you need a CAP exempt H-1B with the full-time employer. So you can't get approved for the Build Fellowship, then go to your employer and say, okay, I'm done with the Build Fellowship now that you've gotten an approval on the concurrent visa. Doesn't work like that. You have to stay in the fellowship program for as long as you need the concurrent CAP exempt H-1B. When you win the lottery with that employer, when you get an O-1, when you get a green card, you can leave our program at any time, and then you only have to work for that employer the full time. So I hope that's clear. But for as long as you need to be in this fellowship program and need CAP exempt H-1B status, you can't just take your CAP exempt H-1B status and leave the fellowship. So we have Open Avenues Foundation. I said Dream Venture Labs. We're really excited about launching a new program in Washington, D.C. with the city of D.C., the mayor's office, and George Washington University. So really exciting new initiative for founders in D.C. There's other incentives if you're interested in locating in D.C. Really exciting opportunity there. You can let me know. 175 fellows is way outdated. We're up to 250 now who have been sponsored through our program, 99% approval rate. We have 12 colleges and universities nationally that have students that get to benefit from those projects I was showing you. 1,600 students have participated. And the really exciting part is that these students actually are more prepared for career after you work with them. So very, very cool part of the program. Okay, pricing. Companies are paying the Build Fellowship $18,000 upfront. It includes the visa, the government filing fees, premium processing, the work that we're doing to set the fellowships up. And then there's a monthly fee of $1,300 per month. That goes to the ongoing education program, compliance software, et cetera. So we are, not, the price of this is sometimes a barrier. Other times it's less than the company replacing you with someone else after they've invested years into your work. And so if you've been on OPT with an employer and you feel like that they value you, this is a great program to bring to the employer. You can also bring to an employer if you're seeking employment right now. If I were you, I would go and say, hey, I know that you think I'm a risk because you think that I have to be entered into this H-1B lottery every year. And if I lose, then you aren't going to be able to retain me. But I know of this program, and at some point, this is going to exist as an alternate pathway. I'm connected with them, et cetera. So these are tools in your toolbox to be able to pitch to an employer how to do this program. And I want to just end by saying the fellowship itself is not just a visa solution. This is an amazing leadership development experience for the foreign nationals who go through our program. They get a ton out of working with students, of training our future workforce, of giving back to the United States. And I'm really, inspired by what happens between the students and the fellows and how much our fellows really get out of being that leader, right? You could do CPT and you could be a student again, but it's really beautiful to be able to say, I'm spending 5 hours of my time actually training our future workforce in these high demand fields. So I love this program. Obviously, the model I think is a win-win for the country. It's a win for you. It's a win for companies. It's a win for universities and students. And I would love to see all 32 of you apply for this program. And I will do whatever is helpful to help get you there. I am going to stop sharing my screen. We can jump into a Q&A. And I already see a few questions that have come up. So I'm going to work through these first, and then we will jump. And if you raise your hand, I'll just call on you and you can hop in. Okay, so someone said they're on a STEM OPT expiring 3/31, I assume, of next year, and working with a company that sponsors. Can I go this route? 100% yes, you are exactly who would be eligible for this program. Your STEM OPT is expiring. It makes total sense for you to pitch to them that they should connect with us at the end of this year and prepare for you to get into cap exempt H-1B, because the lottery will happen just around the time of your expiration and you want to already be in status in case you lose. If you are selected in March, then in October, you exit our program, but you will have status for the interim. How much does the program cost? We went over it. Following this route, if my employer is able to file a concurrent cap exempt H-1B, do I have to continue working part-time and my full-time job to maintain status? Yes, we talked about this. Baseline cap exempt H-1B status, concurrent full-time employment. If you take out the cap exempt H-1B status, this is no longer valid. So you have to stay in the fellowship for as long as you need cap exempt H-1B with both employers. I hope that's clear. Can you please explain the company nomination and consultation point a bit more in detail? Yep, we have a nomination form online. Okay, lawyers can fill this out. If you have an attorney and that's going to thinks you're a good fit for this, you can fill it out yourself, and a company can fill it out. In there, it will say who are you nominating. You might be nominating yourself. You might be nominating an employee. You might be nominating a client, right? So it's important to identify that in that nomination form. But the biggest thing is just get in a form, and then we can start a process where our partnerships team will communicate with you and with an employer and with an attorney and get this going. So in the most ideal and efficient world, you have an employer contact us right away. If you can't figure this out, have your employer email me and we will hop on a call, and I have a booking link and we'll just get going. So the quickest way is to fill out the nomination form. If that feels confusing to you, I will put my my email in here and we'll just move that way. I'll put both the nomination form and the email. Okay, please confirm my understanding that permanent employers H-1B visa application will go through the lottery. Okay. If you are this is so important. If you are in CAP exempt H-1B status with an organization like the Build Fellowship or a university, you don't need that concurrent employment to go through the lottery. It can be filed immediately and at any time of year. That's the whole point, is that you can get into our program so that you can stay and work for your full-time employer without the lottery. Will you enter the lottery with the employer next year? Yeah, because you would ideally like to exit our fellowship and just work for that full-time employer, right? So you'll enter the lottery every year, see if you win and can leave the fellowship. But if you can't, then you will stay in the fellowship program. Yes. Okay. So filing fees and H-1B. I outlined 18,000 plus the 1,300 a month, right? For pricing. That includes the Build Fellowship visa. It doesn't include your company's visa. Your company everyone will have their own immigration counsel file their concurrent employer's visa. Concurrent employer visas will range from $1,500 to $6,000. That just depends on who your company uses, and we can give recommendations if needed. Yeah, Andre, we also answered that for you. That one-time fee doesn't cover both visas. It covers our visa, which then opens the door for your company to file a full-time visa. Can a founder on a B2 get in the program and volunteer 5 hours a week, since the B1, B2 is not a work visa? We can do a change of status after you've been in the US for 60 days from B1, B2 to CAP exempt H1B, so that you're actually on a work visa. But you wouldn't want to be in our program volunteering if you aren't authorized to work. That doesn't make sense. And just in general, the rule for B1, B2 is if there's someone doing the same kind of work and it's getting any type of work you're doing, volunteering, if it's actually a paid position for others, you can't volunteer to do it. It's an actual job. So that violates Department of Labor standards. So no, other people are getting paid for our fellowship, so you couldn't volunteer for it. But you wouldn't need to, because if your goal is to work in the United States, if you're on B1, B2, you can actually stay in the US and you can do a change of status to a CAP exempt H-1B. USCIS approval given, how challenging will it be for the consulates in India to convince them of a sole part-time H-1B? Wonderful question. We've been figuring this out because for 5 years, it was no problem. We never had an issue. We had 100 plus fellows come in, 150 plus fellows come in on a part-time H-1B, 5 hours a week, with the promise that there would be a full-time position waiting for them as well in the United States. And then all of a sudden it became a problem. And the consulates were like, you can't really do that. We don't like that. You can, by the way, legally do that, but they didn't like it. So now what we do is, if you're outside the United States, both employers need to file their visas. The part-time and the full-time need to be filed while you're outside the US, and then you can come in. So that means that you're entering actually with a visa stamp for your full-time employer, and it's not an issue at the consulate. Initiation fee is due upon contracting before we file your visa. Yeah, we talked about issues with the CAP exempt H-1B at the consulate. We did have an issue. I'm very transparent about this, because why would I hide anything from anyone who's thinking of making this investment? That's not why we started this, and it's not how we function as an entity. It became an issue this year. We had 15 people that had an issue. And since then, we've resolved it. And people are now, it's the dual filing while outside the United States and entering not on a 5 hour per week visa has been our solution. So that's very exciting for us, because that really is not we don't want anyone doing this, making the investment and getting stuck outside the United States. Do I have to work with an employee, or as an employee, I assume, or can I just do the program because I'm still looking for a job? What else can be a benefactor? Okay. You are asking if you can do this program yourself while searching for a job. And the answer is that you can do our fellowship program as a part-time employment opportunity if you're already in the United States on OPT or B1, B2 and want to do a change of status to cap exempt H1B for a part-time role while you look for another job. But it has to be, you have to be nominated by another entity. So it could be your family, your parents, it doesn't, I don't care what the entity is, but you can't pay for this yourself, right? So you can't sign up for the fellowship and just do a 5 hour per week employment. It must be contracted with another entity. So if you have that entity, awesome. You should nominate yourself for this program. If you want to start an entity and you want to be a consultant in the United States and you want to bring your skills through your own little consulting company and you want to spin that up and do a fellowship for yourself, our team will help you do that too. Okay. Vishal, you said, I have a full-time job with the state government agency and I'm on STEM OPT right now. There's no way they can file H1B for me. Then see how this program should work on STEM. Okay, so nonprofit research institutions, government research institutions, those are qualified as cap exempt. The government actually is not. There's different visas for, for government that you should look into. But, I've had, state and local governments come asking to do our program for one of their employees. Unfortunately, salaries tend to be a little bit lower and they have more restrictions on how they spend their money. So it's not common that a government would do something like this. But if it's a government research institution, then they could do this. If they want to partner with us, they totally can. You'd work 5 hours for us and full-time for the government agency is essentially how that would work. The second question is on STEM OPT, can I work more than 40 hours a week? Currently working 40 hours. And if I join fellowship, then it would be more than 40 hours. Well, you don't join our program on STEM OPT. We file a change of status so that you're actually changing status from STEM OPT to cap exempt H1B. So it's never the situation that you're on OPT and on our program. Okay, I currently work for a 501c3 nonprofit as a software developer. What are the rules regarding filing for H1B with such employer? Unfortunately, nonprofits themselves, 501c3s, are not cap exempt. You have to be a nonprofit research institution or a nonprofit affiliated with colleges and universities. So if you are working for a nonprofit that's doing research and can prove that, then you should definitely talk to an attorney about your filing a cap exempt H1B for your full-time work. If your nonprofit does any work with universities on an active working basis and they have an agreement signed with that university, you should consider a cap exempt H1B. If not, unfortunately, you would still have to do our program because we are a nonprofit affiliated with universities. And so, we work with nonprofits who need this themselves. What is the duration of the cap exempt H1B? Good question, Link. Thank you for asking. We file a 3-year cap exempt H1B visa. That is the maximum that you could file for an H1B at any time, but you could extend longer. I don't think anybody here is looking to sign up for a 3-year fellowship, right? The idea here is that we have a minimum of 6 months in the program. You're in the program for 6 months, and then you can leave once you have another opportunity or option moving forward. So we do have that 6-month minimum to be in the program, but after that point, if you have any other solution, you win the lottery, you get your green card, you can exit the program. Can I schedule a one-on-one with someone from the team? You should nominate if you think you are qualified. We're not going to do one-on-one coaching sessions of how to convince an employer to go do this. We have tons of materials online. If you hang on, I don't have anyone from my team in here, or else I would have them do it, but I'm going to send links in the chat, or we'll send it in a follow-up with all the resources of how to talk about this to an employer. And if you nominate yourself, the nomination link, if you nominate and we see that you have a benefactor and we think you're qualified, then our partnerships team will set up a call. You can apply from India if you have an employer in the US. So, and they're willing to file the concurrent visa while you're outside the US. So we talked about entering in on the full-time visa. You can't enter in on the part-time visa right now until we get some things sorted with the State Department. But for now, if you enter in on both the full-time and part-time, you'll be good. Priyanka, so does the employer that we bring in for company nomination have to be a university or nonprofit? Absolutely not. I hope everyone's clear on this. Any US employer can be the concurrent employer. We work with biotech companies, we work with hedge funds, we work with investment firms, we work with marketing agencies, we work with accounting firms. It doesn't matter what kind of company. Your company that's nominating you is absolutely not going to be CAP exempt, because if they were, they would just file the visa themselves. The reason you do this program is it's so that you can train the future workforce, of course, but it's also so that we file a part-time CAP exempt H-1B for you, so that any US employer out there can file a full-time visa and you can stay working at your current company. Okay. Definitely follow me on LinkedIn if you want to stay in touch. I am constantly posting, if you haven't seen already, different resources and thoughts about CAP exempt H-1Bs and the immigration world in general. Okay, salary share. I didn't bring it up. So it's a portion of your paycheck will come through us. Essentially, it's not an additional fee for an employer or your benefactor, but if you have a full-time salary that's being paid to you from an employer, we're going to take a piece of it for 5 hours per week of employment, and it's going to come through our organization. So it's a pass-through of a portion of your salary. And we have thorough compliance on how to make sure that you're getting paid the fair wage from us and from the company without adding additional cost to the employer. Can an individual without a business be a benefactor? Nope. We need an entity to sign an agreement with us as a benefactor. Do we get paid for the fellowship program? You do get paid 5 hours a week, but it's a portion of your full-time salary from your full-time employer. Or if you have a company that's a benefactor, you're going to get paid from that entity. So we don't have the funds to pay all of our fellows additional 5 hours a week. Whoever's nominating or is the benefactor for a fellow is going to be paying for those 5 hours a week. If you have a company where you're already getting a salary, it's not additional. It's a portion of what is being paid. Okay. Yeah. Process of change of status from B1, B2 to CAP exempt H-1B is the same as the process from changing status from OPT to CAP exempt H-1B, or L1 to CAP exempt H-1B, or J1 to CAP exempt H-1B. There's a million reasons why you might want to change status. A J1, you can't get a green card filed for you. It's not a dual intent visa. So maybe you want to change status from J1. We file an application that says this person wants to change status from J1 to CAP exempt H-1B on this date. B1, B2, there is a rule that you have to be here for at least 60 to 90 days, because you can't enter in the US saying you're a visitor and then all of a sudden you're getting a visa filed for you the next day. So the gray space and conservative approach is to wait 60 to 90 days. That's not a hard regulation. That's the assessment from our lawyers. After at that point, we can file a change of status from B1, B2. You're no longer a visitor. You've been here. You figured out a job for yourself. You're sponsoring yourself. You have an employer, and we can file this work visa for you with a change of status. Just to clarify for everyone, change of status means that you don't have to leave the US. You can just change status while you're in the US. Way better. When you go leave the US and have to do consular processing because you've run out of status or you want to go home and travel before you even do this, before you get in CAP exempt H-1B, then it's just a subject to additional risk at the consulate. So when you can eliminate risk in the immigration world, you certainly try. Can we share a PowerPoint? We will do that. In the beginning of this conversation with my company, some companies are not okay with people working outside their full-time job. How do you navigate that? That's silly to me. This is 5 hours per week of you giving back to the United States in a way that anybody would do when they volunteer with students. So I would position it less like a job and more like a leadership development opportunity, professional development for you to be training students in entry-level skill sets that are related to your field. You're not saying I'm going to go spend 5 hours a week starting a supper club. I'm going to cook, I'm going to be a chef for 5 hours a week. You're saying I'm a data scientist and I'd like to work on data science projects with students. That makes you a better leader and it makes them potential candidates for your company. So you can also position this as a pipeline development tool for your company, which I love, because many companies that nominate fellows actually hire the students that work on the projects. I would send them our website. I would send them that student hub that shows those projects, because to me, that's like the most convincing and the most obvious, it's very clear what we do when you look at those projects on there. We will send a deck. Yes. Okay. I was a full-time employee on STEM OPT after undergraduate, and now I'm pursuing my master's in the US. Any way to connect these employers or part-time role? Any way to connect with the employers? Okay. If you go to our website and you look at our company partners, you can see a list of employers that have done this program before. Otherwise, my advice for anyone looking for a job is to look at smaller companies where you can prove your value, build relationships with senior management. I can tell you right now that the Microsofts, the Googles, they're not going to do this program. They have strict policies on what they will and will not do, and cap exempt H-1B is not in their policy of what they will do. So does that mean that they wouldn't agree if you went off and found a benefactor and got into this fellowship and told them? Does it mean absolutely no, they wouldn't do it? Not necessarily, but I've worked for 6 years on this, and I don't know that those companies are going to be down for this model. So my real advice is to go work for some organization that is really invested in every single individual there. No one's disposable, and you're able to build a relationship with senior management. We work mostly with, pre-seed, pre-seed through, like a Series A company that's in high growth mode and thinking of hiring and needs these data scientists and can't afford to lose them. And this price is nothing compared to what they're paying for headhunters, et cetera. Okay. Not nothing, but it's equal and worth it for them financially. So Sushant, you said, to clarify, once the current employer files an H-1B cap exempt and gets approved, will we still have to be in the Build Fellowship? Yes. You will stay in the Build Fellowship program. I'm doing this because I think of it like building blocks, right? Fellowship program, cap exempt H-1B status, and any other employer on top of it in cap exempt H-1B status. You will stay in the Build Fellowship program as long as you need this cap exempt H-1B. When you win the lottery, when you get an O1, when you get a green card, you can leave our program immediately, but 6 months is the minimum. Trump overturning cap exempt H-1Bs. Not going to happen, not projected to happen. H-1B legislation in general, if there's any movement, it will not be reduced, it will be expanded. I don't think any immigration legislation is going to pass in the next 4 years, especially under a Trump administration, given how polarizing he is as a human and how Congress has functioned under these polarizing presidents has not been to come together. And especially on a topic as hot as immigration, there's not projected to be any legislative change. However, Trump, I'm sure many of you came out and said to the besties on All In podcast this week that he's actually wants to create green card pathways for everyone, and he understands the H-1B dilemma. He's not closing off cap exempt H-1B options. New rules are being passed by Biden in the next few weeks that actually expand cap exempt H-1Bs. He would have to reverse those rules and do a lot of hoops jumping to change anything. We actually see lots of positive momentum. I'm already in a cap exempt H-1B, but I'd like to work for a for-profit company. Can I join this fellowship and start looking for potential employers? Well, you don't need us right now, Sweta. If you already have a cap exempt employer, unless you want to leave completely, which I think you're saying. So yes, if you wanted to leave completely and you had a benefactor and you wanted to get into our program, you totally could do that. And we would be able to, you can have another employer at any point file a concurrent cap exempt H-1B. If you're on, and I have no idea why you would need a temporary work visa if you're on an NIW EB2 green card. Maybe you're on the path towards it and you need temporary work status in the meantime. In that case, totally fine. You can, an H-1B is dual intent. For anyone who doesn't know what that means, it means that you have, the ability to actually, pursue a green card while you're in H-1B status. You can file it while you're in status. We will send the recording out of this webinar. Absolutely. Can I work part-time with a US employer, or does it have to be full-time? You can work part-time on H-1B. That's totally fine. And yeah, we could file a 5-hour per week H-1B, and you could have another employer file a part-time H-1B as long as they're willing to pay our fees and it's a contract with us. That's completely fine. Next question. From Nigeria, work in tech. Can you find an employer for me? We don't do that. We don't find employers for people. Are we able to travel and re-enter the US while on fellowship? Absolutely. Once you have both employers where you have an approval, you can leave the United States, get a stamp at the consulate with your full-time employer, and enter freely once you get that consulate stamp. You do have 3 years of OPT. If you join the program and get the H-1B, the question is, will that cut short your OPT period? Yes, it will. I said this at the beginning. You have a choice. You can ride out your OPT for 3 years, and you can wait until that 3rd year to enter the lottery. But why would you do that? You have 3 chances. So you should enter the lottery every year, because you just may as well optimize and get yourself on this H-1B path as soon as you can. I think a worst case scenario is that you end up in the last year of OPT and you have 1 chance in the lottery and you're kind of, 30% chance selection rate. Like, that's really tough for you. So I wouldn't recommend that. But yes, if you win in your year 1 of OPT, there's ways to defer that out so you don't have to file right away, but you would end up cutting short your OPT period. For fellowship, who pays part-time work wage and who decides what kind of job I do? So we do an evaluation for everyone that applies for the fellowship. And we say, hey, you have a data science degree, you're going to be a data science fellowship, and you are going to scope your own data science project that you will lead with students. So you scope the projects. Sorry, wow, that was a lot of talking. Okay, next question. Whew, this is rapid fire. Am I talking really fast? Whew, okay. Madhava, you said, I really need a quick clarification. So I got my cap exempt H-1B approved, working for the fellowship program, and my full-time employer filed a concurrent and got approved. Now can I move forward with the full-time employer leaving the fellowship program? So you're one of our fellows and you're asking to leave the fellowship program because you have the concurrent employer? The answer is no. You must, or maybe this is hypothetical. I don't think you're one of our fellows. So no, the answer is you have to stay in our program for as long as you need a cap exempt H-1B. So you can't just leave the program, but you can enter the lottery, you can prep for an O1, you can file a green card. And that gets to the next question, which is, can cap exempt H-1B lead to green card? You can file any green card when you're on a cap exempt H-1B or an H-1B in general. So world is your oyster. All the EBs are open to you. Can 2 years of work experience be outside the US? Yep. We just want to see that you have value to give to our students. When is the ideal time for an individual on STEM OPT to join the program? Please come to us 4 months at least before your STEM OPT expires. That way we can reduce any stress and risk around waiting till the last minute. So you have till February 2026. So you should come to us in fall of 2025. Does the permanent employer's cap exempt H-1B application qualify for the lottery? You don't need to file the concurrent application into the lottery. It can be filed at any time of year, but definitely enter into the lottery with them after you're in cap exempt H-1B with them, because then you can potentially exit our program and be on a regular H-1B with them. Can we just do this fellowship program without working for another company? Only if you have a benefactor that's willing to partner with us. Am I getting a cap exempt H-1B under the Build Fellowship or under employment? You're getting the cap exempt H-1B as part of the Build Fellowship with one of our nonprofit partners affiliated with universities. So these Build Fellowship positions are for nonprofit entities that are in our network, and you are employed by them for 5 hours a week. Does the cap exempt organization pay us on the 5 hours? Can we work more than that? No, you get 5 hours of employment. That's our program. It's not different for anybody. You will get paid for that employment based on the fact that we are getting paid from the benefactor. Is it a requirement for the applicant to have work experience in the same field as education degree to qualify? We'd like to see that, but you certainly need to have a job. Like if you're going to file a concurrent cap exempt H-1B and you want to stay here with any employer, we need to see that your work is within the fields that you studied. So if you come to us and say, hey, so there's this data science company, I really want to work for them full time as a data scientist, but I have an English degree. Can I do your fellowship? I'd say, that's not going to work, because even though we could technically figure out a fellowship for you, when your full-time employer goes to file, you're not going to be qualified. So why would you do the fellowship? You're just going to be, we wouldn't have the ability, the company wouldn't want to pay for this. So at a minimum, for part-time employment for a US company can lead to a green card. If you're in status that's dual intent, like an H-1B, then you could have them also apply for a green card. Any minimum time we have to stay in the Build Fellowship, minimum of 6 months. Can the Build Fellowship's cap exempt H-1B application include H-4? Absolutely, good question. If you have a family and you are on a Build Fellowship cap exempt H-1B, you can certainly apply for H-4s for your family. 52 questions we just got through. No wonder my throat was closing. That's so funny. That's a lot of questions, but I hope it was helpful. Thanks for the 25 of you that stuck on here and listened to the Q&A. I am going to send all of the links that we talked about after this, but follow me on LinkedIn. You'll be able to hear of, all of the updates with our program. I'm going to just immediately link the nomination link so that you can go through. For anyone that wants to nominate yourself, here is the link. If you have a benefactor, or anybody who is working for a company, and you want them to nominate you, it's a little bit more of an expedited process, then you can have them nominate you here. If you want to get in touch with me, here is my LinkedIn. And you should definitely friend me, and you can message me, and we can chat about what's going on. But I definitely encourage you to get into our process through the nomination form. Wonderful. Harit, glad you had a good time. Sushant, glad you got all the answers to your questions. Amazing. All right, crew. Nice to speak to all of you, even though it was a webinar format. And let's be in touch. Message me on LinkedIn. If you're in New York, we do these Build breakfasts and we hang out over. It's a breakfast club I started in New York City. So message me about that if you're interested. We have one in 2 weeks. Cool. All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye.